we are going to hear an overview of the PNPG Act for you. All right. And a couple of cases that have come up and about some amendments that are in the pipeline and what is being discussed with the government, right? So may I invite Renu to begin her presentation. Renu works on women's health and rights. She is associated with SAHEB. She oversees a program on health for the urban poor. She's on the steering committee of Common Health, and she's one of the joint national conveners of the German Swasthya Plan, and she's also part of the JSA Gujarat. She's a member of MFC and other people's organizations like UCF.
Between what happens on the ground when it comes to BCP-NPP Act and the NPP Act. Basically what is happening is that activism around the declining sex ratio is actually ending up in restricting women's access to safe abortions. And that's what I'm going to be unraveling in this presentation. This presentation is based on evolving perspectives, personal perspectives as well as perspectives of a group of people, and the group that I'm referring to is around this coalition for maternal neonatal health and safe abortion, which is called Common Health, and how we've been encountering what's happening to access to safe abortion through what is happening on, as I was saying earlier, the campaign against sex selection. So let me just go ahead with this. As part of the women's movement and the women's health movement, for a long time we've been concerned about what's been happening to the issue of sex selection. Some of us were part of the early 1980s struggle where the Forum Against Sex Determination came up after finding out that a lot of sex selection was happening and sex selective abortions were happening. And so while that was happening on the one hand, on the other hand, there were people like us who were part of the women's health movement. And as being part of the women's health movement, one of the things that we sort of found was that unlike in many other countries, we were given the NPP Act on a platter. In many other countries, women's movements have struggled and are continuing to struggle to get access to legal abortions, whereas we didn't have that in our country. And so for us, the issues were different. The issues were access to safe abortion, the issues were access to quality abortion services. And both these things were going on side by side. The left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing for a long time. And then we were faced with this challenge, as I will sort of describe earlier. And we had to, many of us had to clarify our own positions. What did it mean to work for declining sex ratio, and how does it impact on maternal health and safe abortions? We did talk about yesterday about how much unsafe abortions contribute to maternal deaths. The figures range between 9 to 13%. One of the important things underlying our work in both these areas is the recognition that gender is a very important determinant both of sex selection and of safe abortion. Sex selection is a result of women's very, very low status in society. It's a result of son preference. And there are a whole host of gender issues which underlie safe abortion. First of all, the need for abortion itself is caused by the fact that women have no control over their bodies. They are subjected to non-consensual sex. They have no access to contraceptives. They don't have information about contraceptives. They don't have access to safe contraceptives. There is a lot of stigma around abortion. There are so many studies which are common experience, which tells us that the status of abortion in India, the legal status of abortion in India, there is a very, very low awareness of that. Women don't know that abortion is legal, that they can access abortion, and they think that it's all sort of shrouded with a whole lot of moral, religious, cultural sort of taboos, and there's an atmosphere of secrecy around safe abortion. So which leads to, around abortion, which then leads to a lot of unsafe abortions happening. Yesterday we did start off the discussion on the backstreet abortion, putting roots and sticks in the vagina and several other very, very harmful and actually fatal ways of inducing abortion. This is another way of showing the same thing, that gender, sex selection and safe abortion are actually overlapping. Patriarchy, son preference, daughters being unwanted are a result of gender and the sex selection overlap, which is further compounded with our policies, the small family norm, the two-child norm, and this whole debate around individual rights of how many children I can have, and the demographic goals which are laid down by the state. And so this is how this entire circle works. And this is the basis of how we view these two issues of sex determination and safe abortion. So now I move on to the PCPNDT Act. The PCPNDT Act, which many of us were actually instrumental in, sort of bringing about. What does it do? It lays down, the Act actually regulates the use of prenatal diagnostic techniques. That is what the Act is made for. The testing of a fetus to find out whether it bans the testing of the fetus to find out the sex of the fetus. And prenatal diagnostic techniques actually are really important. As our friends later will tell us, we have gynecologists and obstetricians sitting with us to identify a whole host of congenital sort of abnormalities and to deal with those. So the PCPNDT Act lays down a regulatory framework within which the prenatal diagnostic techniques can be used, the qualifications of the personnel, the reporting framework for the use of the techniques, the conditions for conducting the prenatal diagnostic tests, and it says very, very clearly that these tests cannot be used for the purposes of sex determination. It designates implementing authority. It prohibits any kind of publicity of use of the test for sex detection purposes, and it calls for proactive steps by clinics displayed on the boards. In operational terms, it means that no person conducting prenatal diagnostic procedures shall communicate to the pregnant women concerned or her relatives the sex of the fetus either verbally or non-verbally. All clinics who conduct ultrasound must be registered, and only doctors qualified under the Act can use the diagnostic techniques. All clinics should display prominently the disclosure of sex of the fetus is prohibited under law in English as well as in the local language. Doctors or clinics who are advertising sex determination tests in any form are liable for punishment. And the amendment has brought all the newly emerging modern preconception sex selection techniques used by the infertility clinics along with ultrasound machines under the regulatory purview. This was a result of the amendment. The act was first, as you saw in the first slide, was made in 1993-4, and the amendments brought in this clause of all the new techniques would also be under the purview of the Act. And it has made it mandatory not only to register all types of techniques but also maintain records of every scan done. Now, these are some of the critiques of the PCPNBT Act. Is there any way to ascertain that sex determination is not carried out in facilities which follow all legal requirements? So you may have all the legal requirements, but how do you actually ensure that sex determination will not happen? Technology is advancing so fast that it's difficult to keep pace with all the technologies. And currently, these IVLs, the assisted reproductive technology clinics, are actually hubs of sex selection. So there's no way actually of controlling technology. Even though the law mandates the reporting of cases, conditions under which the diagnostic tests were conducted, patients' forms, patients' details, both the clients and the service providers record reasons that fit within the legal framework. So there are many loopholes. I mean, you can just do whatever you want to while complying with the legal requirements. We know this, many of us have had this experience, that sex of the fetus is disclosed in many different creative, innovative ways. Often ultrasound tests and the abortions are done at two different places, making it difficult to establish any link between the two, and proving that a particular abortion is sex selective is as difficult as proving that the ultrasound test was conducted for sex detection. In practice, therefore, what is happening is that it is impossible to identify sex detection tests. And so, what is happening is that the focus is shifting to abortion, to preventing abortions. So, basically, regulatory frameworks, while they are very necessary, they are not sufficient. That's the point. We come to what then needs to be done a little later.